And welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. I'm Salvador Cordova. Let me know if the audio is coming through. I've been learning StreamYard, so it's been challenging. It has some more power than I'm learning how to use Streamlabs. It has a little more power and flexibility, but it's a beast to run. So I wanted to start off with some soothing music because some of the things that I'm going to delve in today are a little bit distasteful. So let me offer a prayer for this stream. Heavenly Father, be with us all today. Brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, especially who are watching this stream, encourage us in this increasingly evil world. But you have said, Lord, that the gates of hell will not prevail against your kingdom. And Lord, be with the needs of those who are watching. I lift up Schnoil and his dear uncle, and help me to be effective, help the technical things to fall in place. In Jesus' name, amen. So let me know if the audio is coming through. I'm going to try to get the chat working here. Oops, I'm going to try to get the chat working here. Let me see. So I can at least display some of the live chat. So it's a little tricky to try to get this going. Because I can't actually set it up until the stream is starting, which makes it a pain. So let me see if this will come up, and there. All right, a little better. Well, thank you for the feedback, Bread of Life, Rebecca. So, what to talk about? The culture is falling apart. Let me show the Gothard Tunnel here. There's a ceremony for the Gothard Tunnel in Europe a few years ago. The opening ceremony had world leaders. You could see there Angela Merkel and the leaders of the European Union. The Gothard Tunnel was being opened, and they wanted to have an opening ceremony. But what ended up happening is this opening ceremony had a lot of satanic themes in it. So you have all the world leaders there, and they're going to, whether they intended to or not, they ended up participating in a satanic ceremony. And you can look this up. It's absolutely filthy and disgusting paganism. And the question arises, why do this? What's a traditional engineering? I mean, if you look at the ceremonies when they're opening tunnels or dedicating like a road or a railway, they'll honor those who were injured or who may have even perished in the process, because doing civil engineering is very challenging and it can be dangerous. And, you know, it's meant to be a solemn event and to also celebrate the achievement. But instead, they decided to have this display of pagan ceremonies in the ancient times. I believe it was in Switzerland. And that was very disturbing. You know, why did they want to highlight the pagan roots? I mean, Switzerland had Christian traditions. So this looks like just an insult to Christianity. And Europe has gotten very cold relative to where they were. And there are many Europeans who visit the stream, although it's probably in the middle of the night there. So they usually would listen to this if it were live when I run the stream in the afternoon. So let me extend greetings to all the people here. See if I could do this right. It's a little challenging. If you'll indulge me, I have to get the right. So Andrew Kaufman. It's been a while. So I'm just learning how to run all the streams. And Mr. Jetty, it's not quite as easy in Streamlabs to be doing this as it is in StreamYard or Restream, but we'll try to make do. So if there's a really good comment, I'm going to raise it. So that's one thing. Now I'm going to show something about Aron Ra. Now, to be fair, maybe Aron Ra was using figures of speech, but he made an appearance at the Satan conference in February of this year. So this is Aron Ra, and I'd like to give credit to Brett Keane.
So I'm stoked to be speaking at the first ever convention of the Satanic Temple, and since this is our first convention, and since this is my coming out as Satanist, I must open not by speaking to the fine people assembled in this room, but to the larger audience of the tens. So I'm stoked to be speaking at the first.
Let me play it again.
So I'm stoked to be speaking at the first ever convention of the Satanic Temple, and since this is our first convention, and since this is my coming out as Satanist, I must open not by speaking to the fine people assembled in this room, but to the larger audience of the tens and.
So now this will lead to Patricia MacCormack. Oh my goodness. So the theme of tonight is the lunacy that, atheism superficially and scientism superficially looks like it's rational and reasonable, but it ends up leading to lunacy. And the fundamental reason for that is, if we invoke scientism where they say naturalism and science will lead us to things, can you run an experiment? Can you create a theory from science that will tell you how to value one thing over another, how to value what's right and wrong, how to decide purpose? So when you can't run those experiments, the irony is, so if they deny God and they invoke just pure materialism, then all sorts of objective morality goes by. And more in general, and I'm not a philosopher, but this should be kind of easy to deduce. You're not able to value anything. Like, why is one thing, there's not any objective value of why one thing is better than another. And so there's no way of people coming to an agreement except unless their whims are unless their whims are all in agreement, which we know isn't going to happen. So then almost anything goes. But you see what's ended up happening is it's gone into irrationality. If people want to claim they're atheist and then practice the occultist because it makes them feel good, it doesn't matter whether it's irrational or not. In a worldview where there is no value of what's good and bad, and really, if you think about it, there can't even be a definition of rationality except however you wish to define it. So the kind of like you get into a postmodern crisis, if there's not a transcendent God and a ruler of the universe that tells you what's right and wrong, what is to be valued and is not, and who will define what is ultimately rational. If there's no logos that governs all reality, or put it this way, if one assumes that there's no God, no logos that governs reality, logos being logic and many other things. It's kind of a rich theological concept, what Logos, Jesus Christ is. Then there's no systematic way that you can define what rationality is. Anything goes, and postmodernism says, well, whatever you say is there's ultimately no meaning in what you say. It's you make up what you want to believe about what something says, whether it's what you say or the way you interpret what someone else says. So let's go to Patricia MacCormack here, and I'll show some. This is her, and let me monitor the chat here, see if I'm missing. This looks like an interesting comment by Patrick Alexander, so I'm going to try to highlight it here. So let's try this. Aron probably justifies by saying atheism and Satanism are completely compatible. Sorry about losing that. Satanism isn't a religion, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Aron probably justifies by saying atheism and Satanism are completely compatible. Satanism isn't a religion, blah, blah, blah. So let's go back to Patricia MacCormack, and she has a Wikipedia page. And see, this is going to be the consequence of where atheism goes. And there have been some interesting things that as atheism has spread, so has paganism, witchcraft, and occultism. Rather than becoming a more rational culture, and there have been some surveys on this, that there is more astrology, occultism, and witchcraft in the nation than before. So it's not like the very thing atheism tried to say that it was going to lead to ended up becoming increasingly irrational. And Patricia MacCormack, the Gothard Tunnel, Aron Ra is beginning to, is starting to break apart at the seams and go into utter lunacy. So this is Patricia MacCormack. She is a professor, and this is what it would be like when you go into class. Lord help us. So I'm just going to read this, and this is from LifeSite. Feminist professor who practices occult calls for human extinction to save the planet. Okay, I did not misread that. A feminist professor who practices occult calls for human extinction to save the planet. Patricia MacCormack argues for phasing out reproduction as the solution to climate change. All right, there has to be, okay, so she's advocating phasing out reproduction. And you can see the satanic symbols and all that she does, all right? Someone has pointed out that she claims to be an atheist. I don't know if it'll mention this in the paper, in this article. February 10th, 2020. On January 23rd, 2020, Bloomsbury Academic published a call to action for all those who care about climate change. The A Human Manifesto, Activism for the End of Anthropocene by Patricia MacCormack, a professor of continental philosophy at Anglia Ruskin University, cuts to the chase and advocates for the ultimate solution to global warming, the end of the human race. For MacCormack, Extinction Rebellion has a whole different meaning. MacCormack admits to being an occultist magician. She has actually given lectures, often in a get-up that is either supposed to be emulating a witch and bearing an eerie resemblance to the costumes we see frequently at drag queen story time, on the invocation or convocation of demons, which she says is an important feminist or queer practice. Invoking demons, she says, is not entirely risk-free because madness is as likely as ecstasy. She says all of this entirely unironically. MacCormack is not the sort of weak-kneed climate activist who believes that we should save the planet for our children. In fact, she doesn't think there should be any children. A researcher who is published in the areas of continental philosophy, feminism, queer theory, post-human theory, horror film, body modification, animal rights, abolitionism, cinesexuality, and ethics. I don't know what that is. I don't think I want to know. MacCormack once argued that animals are equal to human beings. Now, she's arguing that humans should get out of the way entirely. The abstract for her book describes her thesis thusly: collapsing activism, artistic practice, and affirmative ethics, while introducing some specifically modern phenomenon like death cults, intersectional identity politics, and capitalist enslavement of human and non-human organisms to the point of zombiedom. The Ahumanist Manifesto navigates the ways in which we must compose the human differently. Sorry about that. Specifically beyond nihilism and post-transhumanism and outside human privilege. That is so we can actively think and viscerally with connectivity, actually not virtual, and with passion and grace toward a new world. Let me adjust my screen a little bit here, guys. Oh well. All of that nonsense roughly translated, well, that's not exactly journalistic impartiality there. All of that nonsense roughly translated is that the culmination of human progress should be human extinction. What MacCormack is trying to do is to present the apocalypse as an optimistic beginning. But for other species who will do much better once we're all dead, an eventuality she finds positively wonderful to consider. Her book, according to the Cambridge News, argues that due to the damage done to other living creatures on Earth, we should start gradually phasing out reproduction. This is precisely why these climate fanatics pose far more danger to human civilization than climate change does. They are attempting to seize power by declaring a state of emergency, and once they have acquired power on those premises, they will use it to implement an actual state of emergency. We know what it looks like when the state uses its power to control the reproduction of millions, the forced sterilization, the women who are kidnapped and had their preborn children torn from their wombs, the trauma of truncated families and culture in crisis. It was called the one-child policy, and it only recently began to be phased out in China. It resulted in 336 million abortions and unmeasurable misery. MacCormack, at least, does not try to sugarcoat her proposals. I arrived at this idea from a couple of directions, she told Cambridge News. I was introduced to philosophy due to my interest in feminism and queer theory. So reproductive rights, abortion, have long been an interest to me. This led me more to learn about animal rights, which is when I became a vegan. The basic premise of the book is that we're in the age of the Anthropocene. Humanity has caused mass problems, and one of them is creating this hierarchical world where white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied people are succeeding, and people of different races, genders, sexualities, and those with disabilities are struggling to get that. The book also argues that we need to dismantle religion, she went on. Okay, I'm sorry, my irony meter just kind of blew when she's saying we need to dismantle religion, and she's getting up in a witch costume and deciding for the rest of the world what's good for them, meaning that her belief system is that we're equal to animals. And actually, since she wants to kill us, to eliminate humanity, on some level, she thinks, I guess, I mean, just by that, we're inferior to animals and should be exterminated. All right, so let's go on. This book also argues that we need to dismantle religion, she went on, and other overriding powers like the Church of Capitalism or the cult of self, as it makes people act upon enforced rules rather than respond thoughtfully to the situations in front of them. Presumably, MacCormack believes her solution of human extinction is an example of responding thoughtfully to the facts in front of us, although she doesn't explain how she's going to get people to care about climate change by removing the primary motivation that is offered for caring about climate change, which is the prevention of the planet for people and their progeny. She admits, noting that everyone's okay with the ideas of the book until they're told they'd have to act on it. Not so very long ago, the term death cult was considered to be a sinister term, not an aspirational description of the human race. MacCormack may be fringe for the moment, but she is the future of climate change activism, actively hostile to the human race, and an advocate of phasing out reproduction. Mainstream radio programs regularly host long discussion with people who have decided not to have children to preserve the planet for the children, and MacCormack is just a bit ahead of the curve. Climate activists are utterly convinced of their own righteousness and totally willing to use state power to force their solutions on all of us. We should be listening to the proposed solutions very carefully. And I would like to commend the author of this report, Jonathan van Maren. So let me see if I could find let me see. I'm going to find, there is this blog called From Shadow to Light. And I'm going to, let's see, From Shadow to Light. Let's see, it's one of my favorite blogs. It's run by Mike Jean, a longtime friend. Let's see if I could find his blog. It doesn't come up in the usual search engines, probably for obvious reasons. And I'm just going to read Mike's views on MacCormack, and then I'll have a little commentary, and we'll shut the stream down. I'm going to try to keep this at a reasonable length, not my usual. I once had a really long monologue, 4 hours, 30 minutes on zinc finger proteins. So at least, even though we're not being technical here, I wanted to I wanted to explore something that's, just not my usual nerd torture sessions, and something that I think might be of interest or curiosity to everyone. All right, let's see. Okay, so this is Mike Jean. All right, so this is a great blog, Commentary on Culture. It's run by Mike Jean, who was a intelligent design advocate, and he's a lot like Michael Behe, who accepts common descent but believes in intelligent design. So he and I had a very long friendship that goes back almost 20 years, and we used to post on various venues about intelligent design. And then he moved on to cultural commentary. He is a Christian, probably not orthodox, but he said he said his study of culture actually led him back to Christianity after a time of being what he calls backslidden. And it's been heartening to see him get closer and closer to the Christian faith. So I'm just going to, okay, so he's the one that actually introduced me to MacCormack. All right, so Mike Jean cites another article, and this is where it says that she's an atheist occultist. So I'll just read this. It is against this context that Patricia MacCormack delivers her expert justification for ahuman, on alternative post-human thought. The term paves the way for thinking that doesn't dissolve into nihilism, despair, but actively embraces issues like human extinction, vegan abolition, atheist occultism, death studies, and refusal of identity politics, deep ecology, and the apocalypse as an optimistic beginning. Okay, so I really don't know if she's an atheist, but she's described, at least in this article, as that. And and Mike Jean comments on this here. In this article entitled "Why Millennials Are Ditching Religion for Witchcraft and Astrology," it does link to a survey that shows more than half of young adults in the U.S. believe astrology is science. But other than that, their evidence is anecdotal. Nevertheless, it's pretty accurate that instead of all the nuns embracing new atheism, more and more are turning to various forms of the occult and New Age types belief as a cool thing. So, and then he'll talk about things like Sam Harris, etc. So, I'm just going to offer, this isn't going to be my usual long stream. It's great seeing you all. Boy, I don't know if you can hear that, those sirens. I live near a fire station, and whenever there's an emergency, and that station is called, boy, those sirens are just blaring as the fire trucks and ambulances just kind of keep running out of their station. So anyway, where was I? I have to point out that, yeah, we have Christian universities, but if Patricia MacCormack is at some of these other universities that would be considered secular, see, they are welcoming of her. She's a celebrity. The Christian or creationist viewpoint, I don't think, is any more outrageous than what she's putting forward, or intelligent design viewpoint. So, say you're an old Earth creationist or old Earth ID friendly person, at least in the USA, that's almost a recipe in some universities to be removed. That happened at George Mason University with Carolyn Crocker in 2005, and I was there to witness it. So, yeah, there's persecution in academia, and they certainly slobber and welcome. They practically seem to drool over someone like that and welcome them into academia. And I'm very concerned about where this is going. But I feel this is the spirit of the age. And if I can get a copyright release on the work of Bill Federer, historian, he has said, there have been dark times, and yes, we may be in the end times, but we don't know exactly when that will be. We could have a reprieve like the time of Josiah, or where there were heroes in the time of Judges. And sometimes God will want to make the odds even worse so that he'll get the glory when there's a turnaround. But if the relatively literal interpretation of the book of Revelation is correct, and one's not a preterist, or I'm not going to get into those theological terms, where they think the book of Revelation refers to a past event, that's a preterist, I think. But if the book of Revelation is describing our future. It's going to be very, very grim and something we dread. So you could see elements of where this wicked religion and the following after the Antichrist and the system of commerce of Babylon, which they call the Great Whore, corrupted religion. You can see elements of it already starting to emerge. Whether that will lead, whether this is just the groundwork and it's simmering, or whether it's indicating an immediate collapse of civilization and the Antichrist coming, no one knows. I pointed out that before the Antichrist takes over, if we read Revelation literally, there are going to be signs in the heavens. Now, some people have said that when we see the stars falling toward Earth or moving toward Earth, that could be meteors. But as I thought about that passage, it said the sun, moon, and stars. It's not sun, moon, and meteors. So, unfortunately, I believe there's not really a separate word for stars in the New Testament. They're just lights in the sky. But just looking at the progression of sun, moon, and lights, I think it refers to the lights in the sky being the stars. And when that happens, all the world, for a brief moment, will be asking the rocks to fall on them, the mountains to fall on them, to protect them from the wrath of the Lamb and he who sits on the throne. Just like in the days of Elijah, when Elijah called fire from heaven, the children of Israel briefly followed after what was right and killed the priests of Baal. But I don't think it was but 24 hours before Jezebel starts to try to kill Elijah, and then the people follow Jezebel. So could be the same way. So the reason I'm pointing that out, I still hold out hope that God might give us a reprieve so that the gospel can spread to all ends of the earth. And so we'll just see how this plays out. I really didn't have much more to say than all that. This wasn't going to be one of my longer streams. It was just something that kind of came to mind as I thought about what's going on. And it also gave me a chance to test the new capabilities I'm learning with Streamlabs, which I tried to put on display today. And so let me just look through the comment section and greet people. So greetings to Mr. Jetty, my dear friend and brother, Bread of Life Rebecca, Patrick Alexander, always good to see you, Jesus Garcia, Andrew Kaufman, God bless you, Cram, good to see you too, Testament, good to see you, Mark O'Connell, he said she's nuts, referring to Patricia MacCormack, our dying son. Redeemed Team, Wesley Coleman, great to see you. Sant Pa. What did I want to say? There was something. Boy, I'm having a Joe Biden moment. There was one last thing I wanted to say. Had to do with that comment from She is nuts. I can't remember now what I wanted to say. Maybe it wasn't that important. So with that, let me just try to think. Boy, that really annoys me. that's what happens when I try to ad lib. I'll just have a train of thought and then it goes away when I look at the side chat. So let me just look, see maybe if I'll remember. Oh well, I'm gonna just have to let it go. So I might have a few more shows on relativity and the one-way speed of light. I've gotten interested in this. I actually, I mentioned I'm exploring going into a PhD program. I got offered tuition remission, and we'll see if there are other things. The professor involved is, his specialty is electrical engineering and optics. And I didn't have a chance to tell him about the interferometer I'm building. He wants to introduce me to the faculty at the university. So we'll just see where all this goes. I have a lot of relearning to do. My quantum mechanics is rusty, so is my relativity, classical mechanics, and electromagnetic theory. Just so many things, you know. So it's great seeing you all. And Lord willing, I'll see you again. I'm going to close with a poem. High flight. Take care, and the Lord richly bless you.
I have slit the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, when never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.